broadcast, and it should work, and I can see that people are joining. Okay, so yeah, everything works finally correctly. So let's wait a few seconds for people to join. And yeah, if you could please confirm, I mean the attendees, that you can see the slides and you can see us, the host, that would be great. So you can use chat to do that. So please, I see that someone raised hand. So if you could just please write on chat that everything works and we are visible and you can hear us. Yeah. Okay. More chat. Yeah, I can see the slides and I can see you. Everything works. Everything is okay. Okay, so let's start. Thank you very much for joining us today. Today we are going to talk about how Mindera is able to hire 175 plus developers per year, which is like an outstanding number. And you can see that my guests today and co-hosts have really the experience in the field. So they are going to talk about their hands-on experience, about their practices, and sharing this experience with you, which I'm very glad that you decided to share this experience, because it's not common that someone wants to talk about the success story and sell some secret tricks and tips to make the recruitment process more effective. So today we have Carolina, who is a IT recruiter at Mindera. So welcome, Carolina. We have also Pedro, senior software craftsman at Mindera, so a technical person, and Alex, who is a backend developer and will tell us more about the process from the candidate perspective, and me, CEO and founder at DevSkiller. So do you want to tell a little bit about your experience, about who you are, just to briefly introduce you to the attendees, Carolina?
Sure. I've joined Mindera in 2018, so I've been an IT recruiter with Mindera for 3 years now. So I've been learning a lot from this experience with what we do in recruitment and the Scout team. I'm part of the Scout team, who is a team dedicated to recruitment, and we try to always improve our processes and find better solutions in order to escalate our growing business and the many needs that we have right now.
Okay, Pedro.
Hi, so I've been developing code from, I think it's 12 years now. Been with Mindera for 5.5. Started mainly with mobile, interviewed a ton of different people, very nice people, and that's why I'm here, I guess.
Okay, and Alex?
I've joined Mindera like 3 months ago. I have 4 years of experience, and so far I'm enjoying it.
Okay, so regarding me, so I'm also like an ex-developer, so I have a technical background. I started working professionally in 2004 in IT, so it's like 17 years from now. And during my professional life, I've conducted over 1,000 technical interviews, and I found out that the process nowadays was really a pain in the neck. So finally, DevSkiller was born due to this frustration, and that's why I'm also here to talk to Pedro, Carolina, and Alex about their view on the technical recruitment. And yeah, so do you want to also like share about Mindera, so we'll know the background of the company and the people will be able to like see the bigger picture of Mindera, your expectations from the candidates, what you do on a daily basis?
Yeah, So Mindera has been around since 2014, created by a group of 5 friends united in a purpose of creating a place to work where people come first. We like to work collaboratively and trust each other, and that allows us to work and to focus on what we do and to do so autonomously. We're a software house, but we don't just focus on delivering software systems. We also focus on people and the impact of what we do in many ways. We like to say that we have a decentralized organization where people get together over many purposes, and we don't have a traditional organization, traditional structure. Again, it's a lot about collaborating and involving people in decisions. And I think that's reflected in our recruitment process, in which we try to create for each one of the needs that we have, each one of the, let's say, technologies that we're hiring for, let's say React or .NET or Java. We try to create groups of people that help with it, that include both someone from the Scout team, which focuses on recruitment, and also the engineers that help us with it, that do interviews and to meet the candidates. It's a collaborative process in which we're all building this process together. And well, the idea of bringing the upskiller into this process was also to allow things to make it a process, a more streamlined process, especially in the beginning.
Okay, great. So like definitely Mindera is a successful company, because otherwise you won't be able to hire almost 200 people per year. So that's like one more time congrats in that. And during this webinar, we are going to start with going quickly to the overview of the tech trends or trends in tech recruitment in 2021. And then we'll like talk about the Mindera experience with IT recruitment, with the challenges, how they were going to fix them, and how they were going to like make the process scalable. Then we'll also see how the process looks like from the candidate perspective. It's often skipped, and we decided that it's wrong, that we are like only focusing on the employer side and not talking about the candidates or potential employees, which are like the very, very important part of this picture. And then we'll have a summary and a Q&A. And of course, there is a time for the Q&A at the end, but feel free to type questions on chat, and if they will be like related to something that we are talking about at the moment, we'll try to like answer during the webinar, not leave everything until the end. So starting with the trends about remote work, of course, like I don't want to talk about COVID-19, because we are all like, I think, like bored with like everyone talking about the COVID. We're going to talk about the results. And as a result, you can find out that in the report produced by the Tech Republic some time ago, the workforce that works remotely has like increased drastically. So less than 17% of the workforce globally, IT, was working permanently. So there were a few companies that were already working remotely or were like remote work friendly. But during the pandemic, over 70% of all developers started to work remotely, which is like a drastic change, drastic improvement that changed the way how we work and how we build our talent pools nowadays. And what's also worth to mention is that developers are basically happier at work now than before the pandemic starts. Of course, there are some differences, and I would say even significant differences between generations. So if we talk about the baby boomers, they are basically not happy during the COVID, but all other stuff are like almost 2/3 of the people, for example, for millennials, so 81 to 96 are much more happier during the pandemic. So when we like compare it to the whole or apply it to the whole workforce, it looks like over 50% of people are much happier during the pandemic and during this modern workflow style than it was before, and around 12% on average are less happier. So that's something that is definitely worth to mention here. And the next thing is that because right now developers are allowed to work remotely, it means that we are not limited anymore to the local, the IT market. So if I live in a small city in, I don't know, Eastern Europe or something like this, I'm not only like limited to work for one of two companies in my city. I can right now work for any single company, including Mindera. So it means like the talent pool right now is really global. There are some companies that are saying we are like remote first, and you can work from any place on the world you wish. And of course, there are some companies that say, okay, but we still prefer the similar time zones. So if there are 2-hour difference, then okay. But living in East Europe and working for like West Coast companies still a challenge, because like the 8 or 9 hours time change or time difference is something else that, just working remotely, because it means that we are working remotely and we are working asynchronously, which is not like the same as remote work, where we can call right now and talk because we are in a similar time zone, then like, try to schedule calls at 2 a.m. because we have some important company event that I should join. But basically the talent is definitely much more global than it was before, which means like even the small companies needs to compete with like a global brands for the same talent pool. We are all competing for the same candidates, and due to resources and researches, we can learn that the employer brand is even more important than it was before. And what we can learn from this LinkedIn research is, for example, that the companies with really strong employer brand has like the turnover in these companies is limited of 1/3. So it's like 30% less turnover than in other companies. And what is more important, that the companies with higher employer branding, they have like they are able to hire people 2 times faster. So they have 2 times faster time to hire for half of the costs. So the costs of hiring are much lower, and the time of the time to hire is much faster. And what's even important at the end is that they get 50% more qualified candidates compared to the companies with weaker employer branding. And what we can also learn is that basically the candidate experience is very, very important, and it's even mission critical for employer branding. There are of course few reasons for that, and like globalized talent pool is one thing, but the second thing is that regardless of whether the candidate get a job or not, the applicants who are satisfied with the candidate experience, who are satisfied with the tech interviews, with the whole recruitment process, are more likely to recommend the company, the hiring organization, to others. And like, of course, majority of candidates, especially in tech, they talk about their experiences with friends, each other, etc. So you can even find that, on the local development groups on Facebook, like someone is asking, hey, what do you think about the company X? And someone say, oh, I don't like their recruitment process or something like this. So the candidate experience and employer brand are crucial for this one. So would you agree with that? Like, this is the key to the success, Carolina?
Yeah, I believe so. I think that the candidate experience is definitely the most one of the most important aspects, especially not having a process that takes too long. Even having a lot of steps, it's important that it doesn't take too long between those steps. And we have found that making adjustments in those steps and having to have less time between steps and reaching a conclusion faster allows us to retain candidates in the process for longer, and that gives us a better shot at hiring more people.
Okay, so you are basically saying that being agile, like which is crucial for software development, and like not doing agile, but being agile in fact, because there are a lot of companies that they say we are agile, but they are like doing agile, they're not agile internally, so they are not lean in the processes. So that's something that we should like focus on the very beginning, like having a process that is like that we are able to like improve, scale, and doing retrospectives and like adjusting it. It's crucial. Yeah, if you could just tell us a little bit about the recruitment process at Mindera, so how it looked like before incorporating DevSteer.
Okay, our recruitment process still has 3 stages. Before, the first stage was the first call. Now it's more often the DevSkiller test. Then we have a technical interview, a 2-hour conversation with 2 of our engineers. And if all goes well, we finish with a cultural interview, which focuses more on the way we work and getting to know the candidate. So we still have maybe a couple of pipelines that don't have the test, like designer, for example. It would be hard to do an automated test for something like that, but we have most of the pipelines already doing a test. And this process, we understand that it is a bit of a lengthy process, and a lot of companies have a shorter process. But for us, this is important because our focus is getting to know people and really understanding their way of work, also their technical abilities, in a way that we advance to a committed relationship with the candidate. It's not something quick. It's not something, if it doesn't work, that's okay. We take a lot into consideration the effect that each person has, the impact that each one of us has when they join Mindera. So for us, it is important to cultivate those relationships, and that starts with recruitment, with getting to know people and introducing them to our particular way of work and seeing if that works out. So for us, it makes sense to have such a process this long. So the challenges that we were facing with this kind of process, it was long and demanding. We know that, like I was saying, we know that companies have a faster process, but we value this and we see a lot of advantages to it. We were having too many calls during the first stage. The time that it took both from us, the scout team, to book those calls, and also from the engineers that were basically screening the candidates and these calls, was taking a lot of time. It was usually 30 minutes, and it would be 30 minutes for each one of the engineers. So that would be a lot of time. Also, a lot of people involved in the process. The 2 engineers doing one screening call. So to do, it's not uncommon to have like 30 candidates in a pipeline and to go through 30 first calls with 2 engineers doing each one of the calls. We'd have to have a lot of people to maybe get them through in a period of say 2 weeks at the most. Also, this was taking too much time from our engineers because their efforts are voluntary. They participate voluntarily in the recruitment process. They also have other things going on, of course, work and their personal lives. And we value a lot the time that they give and the effort that they give to this process. And we want to focus those efforts and what we call the most important part of the recruitment process, which is the technical interview.
Yeah, what also I realized in my recent company before I started DevSteer, and that was one of the reasons, like a lot of candidates were asking to have this screening call after the working hours. So they say, okay, so call me at 6 p.m. when I will be at home, and it would be easy. And of course that was useful for them. But if I needed to like, handle like 2 or 3 calls, like one at 6 p.m., second at 6:30, and the second at 7 p.m., that was like really annoying. And when you are automating that, it means that you can send the test during your working hours, and the candidate are able to take them during the weekend or after hours, so on their preference. And that was the biggest challenge for me, like having a calls in like after hours, like 90% of the calls were after hours. Okay, so yeah, so you decided to consider something that like to automate this process.
Yeah. So our recruitment needs for our company, we're growing very quickly. We currently have over 20 different needs, all with several vacancies for each one of them. So we have a huge number of people that we need to hire to keep up with our goals. We also needed to automate the first screening stage of the process because the call was, in many ways, it was a good thing to happen, to have that contact with people, that in person, let's say, contact with people is always a good thing, but it was becoming something that we could no longer afford to do, in a sense. And then a group of developers and the recruitment team trialed different screening tools in the market. So this is already our second tool. Our first tool that we trialed basically gave us an idea of what we really needed. To us, it was something different. It was something new. We weren't, at least the Scout team wasn't really aware of what we needed here. And it allow us to streamline the process. Our concerns were that the screening calls would be ideal from our point of view, of course, talking to people, but sometimes what would happen in the calls is that no tests were given in a call. It was just a chat. And that way we weren't really screening for some technical aspects that would later only show up in the tech interviews. That would mean that we would have a lot more technical interviews than what we needed to have. So important considerations here is focusing the engineer's time on a tech interview, and then the recruitment process feels more autonomous to us for the Scout team. That way, we feel like we can have a little bit more drive in the process, at least in the beginning, with the screening of CVs, and then sending the tests to the candidates. That's something that the Scout team does. And when we do talk to the engineers about doing the tech interviews, we already have a candidate that has some sort of screening, some sort of assessment of what their capabilities are, and also a starting point for the interview. So we feel like doing this, it allows us to use everyone's time in a better way. Like you were saying, a lot of the calls would have to be outside of work hours. And also this reviewing the tests, because the platform reviews the tests, but we also like to do a review of all of the tests that the candidates do, because we feel like we learn a lot more from that as well. That can be done at any time. That can be done in the weekend, on any time of the day, and it's a lot faster than actually a 30-minute call. So this way, with this platform, we were allowed to do more tests and have more technologies covered. That was the difference between the first solution that we tried and this one, is that more technologies are covered, and we have an unlimited amount of tests that we can send, which basically covers a lot of situations. Candidates saying that they didn't have time to finish, candidates that didn't see the invite and the invite expired, or even to send out to other pipelines that aren't exactly so directly related to recruitment, like internships, for example. So the results is that we decreased the number of calls. It's hard to tell exactly how many, how much of the decrease it was, because that allowed us also to have a lot more candidates in the pipeline. We understood that we could do a screening process that was a lot faster, so that we allowed a lot more candidates. We think that we maintained the effectiveness of the first stage, being able to have an actual filter there. We see an at least 50% drop off of candidates after not drop off in the sense that they give up, but in the sense that they don't pass the assessments. So that's a good filter there for the candidates that actually go to the tech interview. We feel like the Scout team, have an easier time with screening the candidates with less fit or no fit, because we know at least we have a tool that allows us to evaluate the basic requirements for each one of the roles. We feel like we've saved the engineers time with this, because going back and forth, we're trying to book calls and seeing the calendars of 3 different people and trying to adjust a lot of times. This makes it a lot easier and the process a lot faster, even though we do give the candidates 7 days to do the tests. So even taking that into account, it's still faster. We've seen that we have decreased in a list in at least around 10 days of this stage, going from calls to the tests. We also see that we do fewer technical interviews, and the technical interviews that do happen, they have a starting point. They can at least start with a test and debate on what the decisions that were made there. And we feel like that really allowed us to scale this whole process, to bring in a lot more people, because while the process is streamlined and it's faster, and we're able to meet a lot more people and come to a conclusion of the hiring process with a lot more people, thus hiring more people. We have sent so far, since we started with Upskillers, some 4,000 tests. So it's a lot of candidates. We receive even more of those that didn't pass the CV screening phase. And then those candidates have seen the tests. So we have that allow us to really go through a lot more candidates.
Okay, so these are the results, and from what I learned, like from the calls, you have like a very good cooperation between the like scouting team, the recruitment team, and the IT. So Pedro, I think it's like your part, like talking about the role of the IT in the recruitment. So if you could just tell us a little bit how it looks like.
Yeah. So basically, Mindera is a bit different from other companies. While normally you have a big HR department where they drive like what is being done, what is the process. They try to streamline every process to be the same because it's more easy to adapt and so on. We're more driven by engineering, and so each vacancy, or at least each opening that we have, can have a different process according to the time, the needs, or adapting to the experience that we had previously. So we are responsible for the screening of candidates, for the interviews, and to define what happens in each of those steps. So I actually agree between ourselves how it's going to happen, but we are responsible for that. So the first thing that we want to maintain, although we're kind of making this more streamlined, is still maintaining our touch, still maintaining that we are Mindera, we care for the person that is coming to us, and we want them to have a good experience with us. So it's just not, so we're not like just growing unstoppably. We do want people to have a good experience, and that experience, so as a developer, there are different types of people. So some of them would prefer to have right ahead a call, but a lot of them are keen to actually show code how they would normally produce it, right? So you normally don't produce code on a whiteboard, writing under pressure with other people looking at it, or on a call. So where you're at home with your Google, searching for answers on Stack Overflow for doubts that you haven't, for things that you haven't touched in a while. That's normal. That's how you actually produce code. So we actually want our technical interviews to be much more similar to what is actually live in coding than just having like an expert on interviews. And sometimes we were finding experts on interviews that did not match experts in life, like in coding, right? So this is one of the things that we found out. So this was kind of nice to be able to deep dive into the actual code and then start a conversation from there. So our process as IT is redefining how we do the process and kind of fine tuning. This is not something that we define from the beginning and it's completely stalled. It's quite the opposite, right? So it has been shifting along the way. This migration to more automation is one of the changes, but yeah, this is one of the things that we've been seeing. What we actually can see when we look at the screening. So when we have different exercises and different ideas for each of the vacancies that we have, is that we actually want to validate the skills of a person before the interview. And this sets the expectation in nice ways for the two parts. So from us, if we see some very nice code, very kind of senior code, that's great for us because we kind of understand who are we supposed to take into that interview. So it's more senior people. We want to already bring some ideas to talk during the interview. Or if the code is just barely working and we want to understand, well, didn't the person have time to do this? Is this the skill actually showing? What is happening here? So it gives us a beginning for the conversation to have afterward. Also, one of the very frustrating things is to have a lot of false positives. So people that we look at the CV and are great CV maker, but not the best candidate. And after 5 minutes, we understand, okay, this interview shouldn't have happened. And it's frustrating for the candidate because it's really, well, we try to not to kind of finish the interview right there. We kind of give you more opportunities, but feeling that in the 5-10 minutes that you're starting the interview, that's not the right candidate, that's horrible. And I think it's horrible for the other person that is also there.
So we can paraphrase Linus Torvalds and say like, CV is cheap, show me the code.
Yeah. Well, and I do think, so I'm pro into giving opportunities to people, but that experience of understanding that you're failing right in the beginning of an interview, I think nobody wants to have. And also, so for example, we have now a pipeline open for graduates, people right out of the university. They don't have a specific skill set, right? So they might know that they want to develop Android or they want to develop backend, or I don't know, but most of them don't have a clear idea on what they want to do. So we give them a test that they can do on multiple skills. So they can do backend, frontend, Android, iOS. They can do multiple of them, and they have control over what they do, and that is very hard to do on an interview. Because you have limited time. While there, they can really show what they're into. And also, well, assessing code is, we can have two ways of assessing it, right? Automatically, which is pretty objective, and manually, but at least when we're doing it automatically is quite simple to do and very, very fast and very objective into the things that we're actually trying to accomplish. So with this, what is our thoughts on the solution that we have? So first, we're having very few false positives, which is great. So as we are growing up as a company, I was starting to do a lot of interviews. So starting by dozens, hundreds, and then growing up. And when we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 10 interviews that are false positives, it starts to get annoying. And then you start to get biased when you go to an interview. You're already starting to think, why am I losing time here? this candidate will probably fail. And that's a horrible thing to also have as an interviewer. You should go there and have some fun also and speak with the candidate. So this is something nice. What I found also is predefined exercise. So DevSkiller has a ton of predefined exercises that are great for junior developers. So people that are joining, it has a ton of different languages and so on. It's simple, it's automatic. You just pick them and you add them. But if you want to, so from my experience, when we go for senior developers, we want to kind of nitpick into the very specific thing. So you want to know if they know architecture, if they know a very specific skill set that you're searching for. So for example, on Android, that means building a very small app, but building it fully. So I want to know how they architecture the app, how they talk among components, how do they test it. So that gives me a pretty good and accurate view on their skill set as a developer and how they could kind of build an app from the ground up. But I know that this is hard because if you try to scale this, like building more stuff and more complex stuff, it demands more from the candidate. And that's something that we're also aware. So we need to keep being on the sweet spot between something that is actually not very demanding for the candidate. So he's doing an interview, this might work, this might not work. So I'm not wanting him to spend like 8 hours a day doing this, of course. But we also want to have some idea of his knowledge. The hard part is to find that sweet spot. And that needs some twinkling, that needs some experience. And I think that also has to do with the feedback that candidates give us. So are we being too demanding? So are we recruiting, and also the results. So are we recruiting enough people, or are they dropping off when they receive the exercise? So this is things that you can iterate over, and I don't think there are closed solutions. I'm personally very keen into giving that comfort to candidates on the time they spend. So I have 3 kids. If I were to apply to a company, I wouldn't have much free time to do it. So I hope we're not also demanding too much time from candidates. And I think we're all always having that thought in our minds when we're defining these processes. So
yeah, so processes is the one thing, but also what's important, like we are trying to craft the test, and I know that you're doing it as well. So it's like interesting for the candidate. So it's not like some boring like implement the Fibonacci that I was doing like 10 years ago in a studies, but it's like interesting. And we used to run DevSkiller challenges on some conferences when, like, hundreds of people were taking the test just to win a hoodie. And like, senior developers who are like earning more than like anyone else, and they say, yeah, that's free hoodie. Let's spend an hour to take it as, because it's cool, it's challenging, and it's like interesting. So yeah, but
I have. So one of the interesting things, I have a small exercise that I'm not going to deep dive into it because I know I still do it, but I have a very small exercise that uses either lists or stacks that I most frequently do to candidates. And it's not that almost all the candidates pass, but it's really interesting to see their thought process. So just to look at the code. And it doesn't take too much time, but if you want to do it properly, it will need some thinking. So yes, that's exactly my thought also, to make it simple, but quite interesting to get to a very nice solution.
Yeah, I think the best feedback that the recruiter can get after the interview from the candidate was like, yeah, thank you, because it was great interview, especially when you reject the candidate and the candidate is saying, yeah, oh, so bad, but thank you, because the recruitment process was awesome. I think like that's the best thing that you can hear ever. So yeah, the question now to Alex, probably like, what do you think about the process that Pedro just described?
So I've enjoyed it. Like I didn't have to prepare. it was something that based on day-to-day knowledge and didn't take too long. It was like 30 minutes. And it was also very clear how the test would be. They had a video showing how it was the interface. And I also it was also possible to download the code and run it on my machine. Then I could use my environment to do it. In general, I think that it's a great thing to have something like this. Like I said before, sometimes I would see a position that I think that would be great for it, but I didn't have the opportunity to show what I could do. They would reject me by just reading the CV. I think that by having something like this, the companies feel more confident or more comfortable by just giving the chance to people. And also, after that, when you go to the interview, like with the other engineers, the topic is set. You already have something to talk about. So it feels like there's less pressure. So it begins to be more of a conversation and not so much of a test, although they do test and other stuff and talk about your solution. So I've actually enjoyed everything, like from the tools and to how the questions were made, and the fact that I didn't had to do some preparation, learning something that I don't use. All of the questions I knew because I've done it, like while working.
Yeah, when I unmute myself, I'm probably able to hear me better. So I think what Alex said right now is pretty important. Like I like this part about like not being forced to learn something, because there are some companies that like create something that I call a fake interview environment. So they are asking about something that is totally unrelated to the daily job. So there are companies that are doing some, I don't know, websites for small, I don't know, tea shops or something like this. And they ask about, like geographical distribution of data, which they are never doing and they're never going to do. And it's just because they want to like show their company as, very like sophisticated company. Then the person came into the job and say, hey, where is this old stuff that you asked me? And it often even triggers the turnover, because we are like showing people on the interview different company that we are in fact. So I think like being honest, as you mentioned also, and like asking for what's important, it's very important part. And just to also piggyback on what Alex said, is that at DevScare, we craft our solution from the very beginning to be developer friendly. That's why, for example, we do not force anyone to try to solve the task in the web IDE, because like how often developers work in the browser. We always work using some version control systems like Git on our local machines, and that's how DevScare works. And what we see and what we hear also from the customer is that the completion rate that we have at the platform is like basically amazing. Right now, of course, COVID helped in this part, and it's over like 5% growth in the completion rate right now. So almost over 94% of the candidates are completing the test they decided to start. Of course, it like requires also some cooperation with the customer to not craft like too long assessments like Pedro said at the beginning. But basically what we get from the developers when we are getting the feedback from about our platform and our process, they're saying, yeah, I liked it because it was like real. It was like native development, and we treated you as a CI/CD engine, not like an assessment platform. And I think that's crucial, because then we are showing the people, hey, we test you about the skills that we care. And I think that was what was Alex also said, that he was able to showcase his skills because he was asked about something that he do on a daily basis, not about some, like algorithms. Like there is this famous tweet about the author of Homebrew that was like rejected by Google, and said, yeah, like 90% of our engineers uses the tool that you written, but you are not able to invert the binary tree on the whiteboard. So like, go out, you are not a good developer to join us. I think they changed this approach already, but people remember on the internet. You can still find it on the internet. So yeah, I think that we are just in time, so we can jump to the Q&A. There are already a few questions. I think mostly for Pedro. Like the first one is about how many time does the assessment take? So do you see any like golden rule here for the length of the assessment?
Okay, so we have different times for different roles. So for a graduate, so someone out of college, I would say that it takes from 2 to 4 hours maximum. And we normally, so DevSkiller has by default a number of minutes or hours per exercise for predefined exercise. What we normally do is expand that time, not because we think that it takes longer, but to allow the candidate to spend whatever time they think is good doing that. So imagine if it takes 4 hours, which is already some time, I would probably put 3 or 4 days, so that the candidate can start now, and for some reason they can't finish and they can do it tomorrow and so on. So I think for more junior positions, I'd say that. For example, for mobile, which I think is one of our most demanding tests, which is actually building an app, a very simple app to show a Flickr gallery. So that depends on what the candidate wants to show. So we do a very kind of basic demands. So we want just to search Flickr for images and then show it in a gallery. That should take you, I don't think, more than 4 hours also. And I'm saying that if you don't have any basis, so just saying grab the laptop right from scratch and build everything. So normally when you're more senior, you already have some tools that help you, right? So it should be much less time. Then if you want to like amaze us, you can do whatever you want, right? You can do certificate pinning, you can do unit tests, UI tests, so whatever you want. So I'm also passing the decision into the candidate, and I'm saying one of the things that we kind of highlight is we don't want quantity, we want quality. So if you have spent 3 or 2 hours and the architecture is solid, you have just simple features, but they are well designed, I'm fine with it. If you want to kind of show off that you're like the best developer ever, I'm also fine with it. But I always want the decision to be from the person that's doing the test, not we kind of define the borders, right?
Okay, so thanks for that. The second question is about like recommending the specific platform of assessment. So of course I would recommend the DevSkiller, but the next part of the question is about the tests. So I would just start the answer and then pass it to Pedro, because there is a question if you can like use generic exams. So DevSkiller right now comes with over 4,000 recruitment tasks, but I think that you will never be able to like cover all of the cases, all of the patterns, etc. So what we decided to do at the DevSkiller is to provide like the quick start tests, and these are the 4,000 of recruitment challenges, but also make it easy for the customers to define their own content and mix the content with each other. And there are some customers that are using the generic test, but also a lot of companies decide to craft their own tasks that are like related, for example, to their I don't know, business domain, etc. Pedro, you said that you are like crafting your own tasks for seniors and using the general tasks for juniors. Do you want to like elaborate also on that? What's the sweet spot for like defining these own tasks?
Yeah, I think it's more so. I think the predefined tasks allow us to quickly, and they already have like tests. They can validate the code. They give percentage on the accuracy of the answer. They are set up to be quick and easy and out of the box to do that. But if I want to kind of, so imagine that I want like a really expert on Kotlin, for example. And because they're going to work on a very hard backend, for example, that has like a code base that needs a lot of concurrency, and we actually need someone that is very keen to know coroutines and so on. So I'll probably draft a question that I know that will hit that spot exactly, and that question might not be present on DevSkiller because it's quite it's not very broad, it's very specific. So kind of interview for what you're searching for, right? And I do that.
Okay, and now there are two questions. I will combine them to Carolina, about the process. So about nurturing the candidates and attracting the candidates to take the test, and about the sourcing. So how much active sourcing is involved in your hiring?
I would say about almost half. We already have we have a lot of applications, but we also engage more and more with sourcing. We have people dedicated to doing sourcing as well, and we try to devote some of our time to do that. On the you're asking also about the permanent hires or the contracting staff, right? In that case, we have both. Generally, we tend to look at hiring as long-term relationships, but unfortunately, it's not possible to cover all our needs. So we do have contractors as well, but we look at them also from a long-term perspective, people that are going to join, and while working with us, they're the same as the permanent hires. And of course, we always take into consideration the possibility of them joining us permanently on a later stage. Attracting candidates to do the DevSkiller test. Well, I think we're more worried about attracting people to Mindera, to our process, and as soon as we can, we detail the process to the candidates. So we try to explain as much as possible, if not through calls with them, also through email to explain the details, what the platform is like, what the rules of the test are, like you can pause and you can save the test once it started, that you have 7 days to do the test, to give them all of that preparation and give them as much information as possible from the beginning. We feel like that has a good result with us, that the drop-off rate is actually very low.
Okay, there is also a question about the conversion rate. Are you able to share the conversion rate of hiring like before and after incorporating DevSkiller?
I don't have numbers for that specifically. We started to look at recruitment from a global perspective. So we have older numbers that are more related to Portugal, and now we have global numbers. We do know that we are hiring more people. We do know that we're hitting new highs each one of the years that I've been here. It's always more and more people. We believe that we're going to surpass the number of over 175. It was actually closer to 200 at the end of the year, and we're going to surpass that easily. The conversion rate itself, I don't have those numbers.
Yeah, so what I can comment also on that is that what we often realize is that people who are like before incorporating tools like Devster or ADS systems, they are not like tracking the recruitment process. And that's what we find often with the customers. They say we don't have any, even the number of the candidates that applied for us, because we didn't have any tool to track us. Right now, you can log in into Devster and you can see how many candidates were like invited, how many of them like taking the test, how many of them like accepted or rejected. But the most important thing that I also learned from our customers is that the conversion is improving, but it's not the most important factor. The most important factor is that they are able to like cut down the cost of the recruitment, and mostly by cost of the recruitment, I mean the time of developers that we spend on recruitment. And that's the situation when you are like, if you are growing and if you are like hiring, it means that there is more work than currently you have people on board. So at this moment, like every hand is important and every like developer counts. And you're saying, yeah, let's get these 20 cool developers, the best one that we have, and let's send them to the interviews. When after, like as Pedro mentioned, like after 15 minutes, they know that they like it's a mistake and they shouldn't sit here. They should code on the product. So it means that incorporating tools like Devster can help you basically like protect your revenue, because you let your people, like developers, do what they should do. So write code and generate money for the company, and not talk to people who are like developer wannabes and they're just lied in the resume and they look promising, but there are, as Pedro mentioned, false positives. The false positive candidates are really a problem, and as Pedro mentioned, is like it's a bad situation for recruitment and for the candidate, because when the candidate see after like 5 minutes that he or she were not able to answer any question, and you are starting to ask easier and easier questions, and there are still issues, like there is a problem. And you cannot just like tell a candidate after 10 minutes, okay, like like that's the end. Like you need to still talk to the candidate, maybe try to teach them something, but like it's consuming your time, and there is no time. And I think that's the most important part. So even if you're improving the conversion rate, definitely you're like cutting time to hire, and you're improving the quality of the candidates. Because what we learn from the companies that are like, let's say, they need to hire, let's say, 50 people. So they will hire 50 people. The question is about the quality, because as Pedro mentioned, like quality versus quantity. So often people focus on the quantity, and that allows them to choose like the best candidates and not to lose the best candidates, which are like very, very short on the market. So they often like get the job for the next day. So if you are able to close the whole recruitment cycle in like, I don't know, 7 or 10 days with a single candidate, then you basically get the best candidates before they are like invited for a job interview by the competitors. Yeah, and I think last question, do you think that haunted source candidate engage with the automated test rather than the phone screen at first stage? Maybe they know all about the company. Okay, so the question is, I think, still about attracting candidates to the company. Do you do, Carolina, any like nurturing calls for the candidates? Yes. Okay.
Yes, very much so. The candidates that we really source actively, we try to do calls with them and to explain the whole process and to talk about Mindera and the projects, and also give them opportunity to ask any questions that they might have. We do feel that this helps a lot, and we feel like there's not many people that say that they won't take the test. That's very uncommon.
And but these calls are done by HR, right? It's not like
yes, by the
IT
scout team.
Okay,
yeah,
so I think that's important, because it means like you're like utilizing the resources that you have for this particular reason, not like the developers that are voluntarily like participating in the recruitment process. So yeah, okay. I think we have it. So thank you very much. I enjoyed the call a lot. So I hope our attendees enjoyed it as well. We'll share with you some short survey about the webinar. So please like spend these 2 minutes to give us the feedback, because at Devster we are also very agile, and like getting the feedback and doing the retrospectives is, I think, the most important part. The most important part of like being agile and improving, continuously improving. So please find 2 minutes and give us the feedback. Yeah, that will be your input into our webinar. So thank you very much one more time for joining us. Yeah, have a nice day, and we'll share the recording with you as well in a few minutes. So thank you very much, and have a nice day. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Okay.